Welcome to Leadquake videos. Once again, we want to do something very spectacular. We're bringing to you current information with regards to the fuel subsidy. We're doing an expose, and so we're going to be exposing a lot of facts that you may not have come across in the past, because in Leadquake videos we offer you in-depth analysis of issues, trending political, government and leadership issues, as you will not get anywhere. And so, of course, permit me to tell you that the removal of fuel subsidy is no longer news, as it has become a daily reality for Nigerians who are already grappling with how to survive the immediate and the long-term consequential impact on their socio-economic realities. But one thing that we must understand is that the energy sector of any country is very instrumental to the level of development of that country. Simply put, if we can get our energy sector to work, particularly getting the upstream and downstream petroleum sector to work, Nigeria will become an economic giant, not only in Africa, but in the world. Have you considered what changed the fortunes of Arab Emirates or the Abu Dhabi Emirates? Do you know that the Dubais of this world and the Qataris of this world are a result of effective management of their oil boom, just as we had it in the 1970s? Do you also know that a working energy sector, particularly a functional refinery in any country, will help the country to gain the ability to process crude oil domestically and produce various petroleum products such as gasoline, diesel, and kerosene, which will reduce Nigeria's reliance on costly imports and strengthen Nigeria's energy security. So in this video, we are going to provide you with an insight and in-depth analysis of the issues that surround the fuel subsidy regimes, as well as attempt to provide answers to certain questions that might be bothering your mind. But first, I want to thank you, especially those of you that have subscribed to the Leadquake channel on YouTube and even on Facebook, and to request that if you have not subscribed, kindly hit the subscribe button right now, and don't forget to also hit the like and the share button so that other Nigerians can have access to a well-researched information about the fuel subsidy that we are going to be offering you, and other issues that we're bringing to you on a daily basis and on a weekly basis, so that you can be more informed, more aware of government policies and programs. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this short break.
No provision is there for fuel subsidy. The fuel subsidy is gone.
Now, government subsidy is a financial grant extended by the government to private institutions or other public entities to stimulate economic growth. That is how subsidies are meant to function. However, it should be noted that subsidies is designed to encourage private companies to undertake economic activities and business ventures that they will not ordinarily want to engage in, but which the government sees or considers to be in the public interest. It will also interest you to know that there are different types of subsidies, of which fuel subsidy is one of them. Other subsidies range from cash subsidy to health subsidy, agricultural subsidy, and the list goes on, depending on the policy regime or the policy preference of the government of the day, which is usually induced by the current socio-economic factors in the country. So, for example, the agricultural subsidies in this case is a process where the federal government subsidizes the agricultural industries or agricultural produce in order to protect the locally produced products. For example, in the US, government who are still practicing this agricultural subsidy uses price support regime program, in which it pays farmers to keep production down in order to make sure that supply kept pace with demand. So in a way, they help to stabilize food prices and ensure that food production was not wasted. So I want you to get this point. The subsidy, the agricultural subsidy that is practiced in U.S. agricultural sector is designed to help support, through price regime, to support the stakeholders in the agricultural sector in production, so that they gauge the needs of the people at every point in time, and ensure that producers don't produce more than is needed. And so in the shortfall where the producers are not producing more than what is needed, but having the capacity to produce what is needed, the government pays them certain amount of money not to produce. Now, because the government understand that if they go ahead to produce, most of those productions will go to waste. And so to manage the production environment, to ensure that it meets with the demand of the country, they introduced subsidy. Now, let us look at another form of subsidy in terms of the healthcare subsidies. Now, healthcare subsidy usually takes the largest part of the budgets of developed countries. Speaking of the countries like United States, United Kingdom, France, Italy, and the likes. Now, this is a process whereby the government sets up programs that covers a particular percentage of the bills incurred in the health sector by the citizens. So now let us look at, with this mindset, look at the oil subsidy. It is a subsidy regime that is designed as well to bring down the price of oil for consumers. So for instance, the landing price of petroleum marketers, independent petroleum marketers of fuel to the filling station may be 20 naira. And the government considers that 20 naira at that current economic climate might be too high for the citizenry. And they decide to, take a part of that bill from the independent petroleum marketers or importers, as the case may be, say 5 naira out of the 20 naira or 10 naira out of the 20 naira, so that they can now sell, instead of selling 20, 25 naira, they can sell at 15 or 10 naira. So that is what subsidy is supposed to be. So in Nigeria, first subsidy was first introduced in the year 1977 under the military government headed by General Olusegun Obasanjo. The subsidy was introduced because of inflation and economic hardship at that time. And it is important to say that the subsidy as well wasn't only fuel but also other commodities, like I've tried to share examples of subsidies in developed countries in agricultural sector or in the health sector. Now, the period in which these subsidies were introduced was 1970 to 1979, was referred to as an era of subsidy in Nigeria, because everything in Nigeria was virtually subsidized, including education, health, electricity, water supply, air travel, and of course provision of essential commodities such as milk, sugar, rice, etc. Now remember that this was the time of our oil boom, and don't forget we mentioned the fact that the Dubais of this world, the Qataris of this world, and the massive developmental infrastructure that is going on in those countries today is as a result of their own discovery of oil and oil boom. So again, it is important to mention that between 1970 to 1979 was a period of abundance in Nigeria, in which we experienced our own oil boom, giving rise to the phrase national cake, and essentially giving Nigerians a sense of ownership and entitlement to government largesse. Now, this period, which was triggered by the Gulf War in the Middle East, increased the price of petroleum products in the international market. And because Nigeria was producing crude for the international market while refining his crude into petroleum for local consumption locally, the government was not under pressure to price petroleum products locally with the international price dynamics. So we had our own time of oil boom, which was 1970 to 1979, which essentially was the period when oil was discovered in Nigeria, and incidentally the Gulf War came to be, which jolted the price of crude oil in the international market, giving Nigeria excess of money. So compare that to now, where the price of crude oil continues to fluctuate in the international market, but yet Dubai and the Emirate Kingdom and the Qatari Kingdom have been able to harness their boom, the discovery of the oil and the fluctuating international crude oil market price to create a lot of change in their country. And so what did we do with our own? Now, due to the availability of government largesse, the government was able to pay for the subsidy, as at that time without much force. Okay, so we could say that we were actually using our own oil boom to pay for our citizens, not to pay too much for petrol as well as other subsidized commodities. Now, we can tell you that all subsidies in other sectors has been removed since early or late 80s to early 90s, except that of petroleum. Now, as the years go by, crude oil prices in international market began to fluctuate. Nigeria's revenue began to take serious hit, and at the same time, the capacity of the local refineries, due to poor management, also began to decline. Over the years, due to unseriousness in successive administrations and governance procedures in providing needed leadership required to effectively turn around the fortunes of the energy sector by deliberately increasing investment in the energy sector, the collapse of the refineries continued unabated, leading to overall underdevelopment of the country. Now, because there was no deliberate effort, as you were using the refineries, because of course there is nothing that you utilize that does not wear down, that does not have one challenge or the other, or have one fault or the other, especially technical infrastructures like the refinery. Lack of the culture of maintenance, the refineries continued to decline in performance and in operation. Now, it is this inability of the refineries to produce petroleum products for local consumption that led to the annual increase in the amount of petroleum subsidy. Don't forget, as the refineries are declining, they were doing turnaround maintenance with huge amount of dollars. At the same time, they were increasing the amount of subsidy. This is because our government depends on international petroleum prices to price our local consumption of petroleum products. And because the international price of crude oil fluctuates, the price of refining crude oil outside of the country and importing it back to the country for local use became unbearable for Nigerians, leading to the introduction of fuel subsidy to share the price of petrol of importation, to share the price of importation with the importers, thereby introducing the subsidy regime. Ordinarily, this would have been a welcome development if the government were serious about developing the energy sector. But this was not the case, as each administration continued to spend huge amounts of money on subsidies. For instance, between 1999 to 2006, Nigeria spent about 813 billion naira in fuel subsidy. Between 2007 and 2009, we spent 794 billion naira on subsidy. And between 2010 to 2014, the amount jumps to 3.9 trillion naira. And from 2015 to date, we are talking about 11 trillion naira, excluding the 2.7 trillion that the MD of NNPC Limited is saying that we are still owing the petroleum marketers or petroleum importers. And so, how can a responsible government sit idly by for years and spending this amount of money without exploring the immediate possibility of fixing our refineries, when it will have changed the fortunes of the economy by expanding the revenue of government. And so you are here spending these amounts of money, and yet you cannot fix your refinery. And we can tell you that today, Buhari administration in particular have given a contract for turnaround maintenance of about $1.3 billion for the Port Harcourt refinery and about $1.2 billion for the Kaduna refinery. Now, two refineries have $2.7 billion have been invested in trying to conduct turnaround maintenance in two refineries. At the same time, Nigerian government invested about $2.6 to $2.7 billion in Dangote refinery. And so, what is happening in this petroleum sector? Even as the government has been shouting the need for diversification of the economy to increase revenue, do you know that the crude oil can actually diversify the revenue base of government? For example, by refining crude oil, like we have pointed out earlier, locally, the government will have been able to produce gasoline, diesel, and kerosene, among other byproducts of crude oil when passed through fractionalization for export, as well as for increased manufacturing in the country. Therefore, it is grossly a dereliction of duty for any government not to fix the refineries to be able to produce petroleum products for local consumptions. For over 2 decades, this has been the case. Now, to give you a sense of what the refineries could have done for Nigeria and Nigerians, having a functional refinery could achieve the following items. Number one, it will reduce dependence on imports by establishing new refineries, like I said before, which will increase the government ability to process crude oil domestically and produce various petroleum products, for exports within the African country and across the globe. Of course, we are seeing the war in Ukraine and how Russia and the European countries are struggling about gas, the distribution of gas or the supply of gas. And if we were to have a functional, energy system, despite the fact that, we are able to produce gas, we could have been able to take advantage of, this Ukraine war and to be able to increase the revenue of government, as it were, and, strengthen the energy security of Nigeria. Number two, having a functional refinery will help us to reduce the unemployment that we currently have in the country by increasing the amount of job creation and economic growth. Now, the establishment of local refineries, creates a ripple effect on the economy. It leads to the creation of jobs in the refining sector, including technical staff, engineers, operators, and maintenance workers, that will increase employment opportunities and stimulate economic growth, as well as enhance the standard of living of Nigerians. Of course, reduce the unemployment that is ravaging our economy today. The third thing is that it will increase revenue generation and foreign exchange savings. Today, our foreign exchange is in comatose. We have a situation where a dollar rate is beginning to be unbearable for businesses. You can't import, simple raw materials. You can't even transact, simple or participate in simple programs or activities abroad because of high exchange rate. Now, we cannot sell our refined products domestically and export any surplus that will help us to generate revenue and reduce the need for expensive imports. Okay, the fourth thing that we think, beyond helping us to increase our foreign exchange reserve, which can also be utilized for developmental purposes, the fourth thing is that downstream sector development will occur by local refining, by inducing local refining. The growth of the downstream sector, including industries such as transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, and power generation, reliable and affordable access to petroleum products, we help to stimulate all these sectors, fostering, industrialization and economic diversification that we have always been clamoring for. Now, additionally, Nigeria can also develop a robust petrochemical industry, leveraging the byproducts of refining locally to produce chemicals and materials for various applications, which you currently don't have. Then, of course, the price stability and affordability that it will give Nigerians, instead of relying on imports, will help to stabilize, our economy and reduce our dependence and our, exposure to geopolitical manipulations. And so these are benefits that local refining capacity can entrust in our economy, and which the government has failed to do. The sixth thing is technological advancement and knowledge transfer. Now, investing in local refining capabilities requires technological know-how, research and development. In doing this, Nigerians can foster, innovation and knowledge transfer with other partners, with international experts, attracting foreign investment and developing local expertise. Now, this will contribute to technological advancement and the overall development of the country's human capital. These facts demonstrate the importance of local petroleum refining for Nigeria's economy. By refining petroleum locally, the country reduces dependence on imports, creates jobs, stimulates economic growth and diversification, and generates increased revenue while saving foreign exchange that will help to develop the downstream industries and ensure price stability and foster technological advancement. Ultimately, local refining strengthens Nigeria's energy security and contributes to a sustainable and self-reliant economy that brings prosperity to Nigerians. Now that we know that many of these government officials understand these econometrics, therefore, the big question is, why have they refused to travel through these paths? Why have they refused to simply commit to ensuring that our local refineries produce at the optimum? Now, the simple reason is the fact that Nigeria lacks strong and effective leadership. And like many will say, that is the only natural disaster that nature bestowed on Nigeria. However, we will disagree with that notion with the simple reason that there are some persons that have benefited from this subsidy regime that would prefer to strangulate the country rather than see the subsidy removed from petroleum products. Now that it has been removed by the President Buhari and President Tinubu administration, what are the implications? First, it is important to point out that while the long-term implication will favor Nigeria's economic growth, the short-term implication will mean gloom and doom for the ordinary citizens. Therefore, it is in the interest of the government and the social partners to ensure that justice is not just done, but it is seen to be done by making sure that they provide adequate information for Nigerians to understand the intricacies and the inner workings of the subsidy regimes. We should be able to be informed about those people that ripped off the country through these subsidy regimes. And we should remember that sometimes in 2012, there was an investigation that was conducted by the House of Representatives, revealing that over $230 million were embezzled through fuel subsidy in 2012 alone. So now that the subsidy is being removed, it behoves on the government to demonstrate transparency by telling Nigerians which companies have benefited from the subsidy regime, how much has really been invested in the scheme, and what quantity were imported and distributed in Nigeria, to enable Nigerians to appreciate or question the use of these monies, or to further help Nigerians to ask relevant questions that can help to give us a closure. Because in 2012, when that investigation was conducted by the House of Representatives in National Assembly, it ended with the House of Rep member in the person of Lawal to be indicted, whereas the companies that were mentioned or not mentioned in that investigation, nothing was heard about them. And so it is time that President Tinubu bring up this matter and question relevant people about this subsidy regime. Until we come your way once again, thank you for joining us in this video.